Welcome to the Rude Dog Show. This is Rudy Reyes. Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you download the app. It's free. When we talk about applications and we talk about things that we don't want on our phone, just throw all the other sports app out because WBLC Sports app is all you will need, at least for this hour. No, I'm kidding. You'll need it for the rest of your phone's life. Make sure it's plugged in and ready to go. Make sure it's supercharged, because that's what this show is all about today. It's a supercharge. No, we're not talking about football. We're talking about the NBA semifinals. And what's interesting is we talk about the finals as if it's in a future tense. And it is. But the teams that remain to be there are, well, you could probably pick a straw. And if you're the shortest one, I'd say it's Warriors Cavs as a preview last year. But look, plenty of basketball to go around. So don't quote me on it. But anyway, welcome to the Rude Dog Show. This is Rudy Reyes at WBLTsports.com. I have two very special guests, and we seem to be on a similar wavelength, gentlemen. Anyway, welcome first and foremost to the show. Coach Dave DuFour does great things with basketball, has an IQ of the NBA that only the other guests that I have can rival, and is on a similar wavelength, and that would be Oliver Maroney. Does great things at almightyballer.com, does a lot of great things, talks to a lot of coaches, players, has insight in the NBA. These guys are fantastic in the industry. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks, guys, for joining me at the, the proverbial last minute. But thank you nonetheless. I know you guys have been watching this NBA semifinal matchups in the Eastern and Western Conferences. I had Mr. Chris Axman on. Mr. Oliver, you know him very well, who has his hands full with the radio portion that you guys are diving into. The endeavor is ever flowing. And tell us a little bit about that. I was trying to talk to Chris a little bit more so in relation to the radio program you guys are trying to put together, but how can listeners go check that out if they just want pure, unadulterated NBA action?
Yeah, I am actually not a part of Almighty Baller, but I know Chris very well, and I know kind of what he's doing. He's running something for Dash Radio, is from my understanding, and I guess he's going to have basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week content of some way, shape, or form. So he's basically assembled like a bunch of shows. I appear on his shows every once in a while, but not don't have my own show or do anything at all currently.
Okay.
I know Chris very well, and his show is very good, and they've got a ton of insightful people on there. I'm sure Dave knows a lot of them as well, but yeah, they're good people.
Okay, well, very good. My apologies for the disconnect and the reconnect. And Coach, where can people find you and interact with you and basically get all your goodness you have to offer on Twitter, as an example?
Well, I mean, like going to Coach Dave DuFour on Twitter is where the majority of my stuff is, but I do a lot with D-Ball Breakdown, and we do a weekly podcast, Coach Nick and I do, where we try to solve the NBA's problems. And then now that the playoffs have started, we actually are adding a second podcast during the week because there's just so much stuff happening. There's a lot to cover. Games are meaningful now. People are actually trying hard. They're flipping the proverbial switch. And, so you can, at those places. But, Twitter is a good place.
Twitter's always a good place for a lot of people. Look, last night the NBA witnessed two of the best games you'll find between Cavs and Pacers, and maybe you have taken a glimpse into the Grizzlies and the Spurs. That game happened in San Antonio. But no matter what you're watching, these games were amazing. And if you're a fan, you certainly were not disappointed. Let's take a closer look at how the Cavaliers have taken a 2-0 in the series against the Pacers. And look, I suspected this to be the case. I did not foresee the Pacers to go down 2-0. But when you look at just having, one particular player in Paul George, it just makes you wonder, is this team more like the James Harden for the Rockets or the Russell Westbrook for the Thunder in relation to putting all the weight of the world on his shoulders, fighting an uphill battle now 2-0 against Cavaliers? Dave?
Yeah, I would say that the roster construction is pretty similar to OKC, although I think OKC probably has a little bit more talent top to bottom. Miles Turner is going to be good someday, but he's not there yet. I mean, he's a young player. It's only his second season. Paul George is obviously an otherworldly guy, definitely a top 20 player. And, it is a lot of weight on him. I mean, he played 42 minutes in the game last night, which, probably isn't even enough. He probably needs to play upwards of 44, 45 minutes if they want to stand a chance to steal a game. But I think the bigger story is that Cleveland is just such a juggernaut offensively, and they are going to shoot the lights out. And, I just don't think Indiana has the firepower to hang with them. I mean, when you've got Kevin Love as your third option, and he's able to put up 27 with 11 rebounds, 12 to 12 from the line, that's insane.
Well, that's what you want if you're Cleveland, is to have a solid starting candidate to have the teams that are now or maybe even tie up the series at 1-1. I don't think anybody basically owns the series now unless you're talking in NHL. But when you look at the parity between the Cleveland Cavaliers and what it's not as if they were missing anything last year. Okay, they really showed it against the Warriors, but in relation to Kevin Love himself individually, I mean, in the first quarter he had 10 points, 7 rebounds, and also shot 57% in the first quarter. Kevin Love was a hit and miss guy throughout the regular season. Oliver, why is he so hot right now, and do you foresee him becoming even hotter as the series continues?
Well, in the playoffs, you've got to focus on the team's best players, whether you're, LeBron James, Paul George, etc. So Indiana focuses in on LeBron more than they would other players, and they're trying to limit the amount of opportunities that he's going to get, because if he takes it to the rack and gets the line every time, it's, you're toast, you're done. They've got two excellent players on the perimeter, Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love is the prototypical LeBron teammate. Like, LeBron has always had a guy that when he drives in, he can kick out to and hit that open three, and that's Kevin Love. And so, when you have a guy like Kevin Love on your team, the reason why he's succeeding so good right now is he's tough to mark up against. Look, he's a power forward, but he can shoot outside. He's the prototypical, NBA stretch four. And albeit, look, he's had his injuries, he's had his, inconsistent form here and there, but this is finally the time. I mean, look, he's been there, a couple of seasons now, so he's got it under his belt and he feels a little bit more comfortable. When you feel comfortable, you've got confidence in your shot, and you can make them. So that's the reason I think that he's succeeding so much and doing so well right now, is just because, look, he's got a teammate in LeBron James that can pretty much find any open teammate at any time during the game, and that he's comfortable. And he's comfortable in his role, and he's comfortable in the situation that he's been given in, and that's the reason you're seeing him succeed at a high rate right now.
Well, the high rate continues. I mean, it was almost as if Kevin Love, there was so much dissension seemingly in the Cavaliers' regular season play between LeBron James saying, look, I need Deron Williams, and I need this guy, and I need that guy. It was almost as if they were lollygagging. I know most people don't even know what that means, but they were really limping into the playoffs. Do you think that it was was it an internal problem, or was it just starters otherwise would be looking to more of the bench in relation, and the coach obviously looking to the bench as well, Dave, when we're talking about the play style and the play mentality moving into the playoffs, because they had missed quite a few games in the regular season? As to where they're at right now is anybody's guess.
Yeah, Cleveland's bench issues are definitely not solved. I understand where LeBron was coming from. He wants to lighten the load during the regular season. But, they didn't have a single person out of double figures outside of the big three. And I think that, really they need to lighten the load in the playoffs. LeBron playing 42 minutes a night after averaging 40 during the regular season. It's not like he's now ramping up. Yeah, I feel like they could get more out of this bench. I mean, Kyle Korver put up 2 points in 14 minutes. Kenny Fry, 3. It just they could use a lot more from the bench and more on the defensive end is where their issues are. So far, the playoffs, their defensive rating is not great. It's like 115 or something like that. And so they're really having to outscore the Pacers in the first 2 games. And they just barely did it 2 games in a row. So the defensive problems are where I would be focusing if I was Coach Lou.
When we talk about the Cavaliers, where they're at in relation to having a deep bench and those guys that can step up, that can make the impact when their name is called to get some hardwood time. Look, Cavaliers never lost a playoff series when they take a 2-0 lead. Everybody knows that. It's not like it's a big mystery. Even heading into where they're at right now, you could really look at it and say, well, are they doing more on the offensive side of the court? Oliver, do you see them putting on the same type of, do they have the same starters going into game 3? Or do you think they'll mix it up a little bit to keep, as what Coach Dave was talking about, defensive guys, the defensive presence to further put Indiana off its kilter?
Look, I think that Cleveland's defensive problems are clear and evident. I don't think they're going to change. They've tried making rotations and adjustments to the lineup multiple times during the season, and it really hasn't done anything. I think it starts with LeBron James. He hasn't been the defensive juggernaut that we've known him to be. And, albeit, look, it was the regular season, but even now, I just don't know if he's got the same level of intensity on the defensive end of the floor that he used to have. And I think other players can feed off that. And so you look at a guy like Kyrie Irving, he's not an excellent defender. I don't think Kevin Love is an excellent defender by any means. I think he's probably, I think most people would say he's a poor defender. And if they, I guess from my point of view, there's really nothing they can do other than ride the ship and try and hope that they can outscore teams, because I don't know if there's anything they can specifically point to and say, yeah, you need to do this or you need to do that or make a rotation change here or there. I honestly think that the personnel is just not built for a defensively sound team. So they're going to have woes on defense. They're going to have bad games on defense. They've had it all season long. They've been extremely inconsistent. Sometimes when teams play very good team defense, it shows, and they have had good defensive games here and there, but it's not consistent enough for me to say, yeah, I think moving Kevin Love out of the starting lineup and putting someone else in would make a difference, or, having Shumpert, play more minutes or whatever. I just don't know. They're very inconsistent on defense, and I don't know if there's an answer for them defensively. I think they have to try and outscore opponents.
When I look at LeBron James, game 1 was an offensive onslaught from both teams. Of course, unfortunately, Paul George wished he had taken that very last shot, and in fact should have taken that very last shot in game 1, losing by 1 point. But LeBron James, 32 points, 13 assists, 6 rebounds. And when you're Cleveland and you surrender a double-digit lead in the first, that's more responsibilities. But in all fairness, when you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers and where they're at right now, they were a much better team last year defensively because they had the rotation, because they had the guys. Coach, when you look at what they're trying to do defensively, do you think they become even better in game 3? Maybe take a page out of what they did last year in the finals against the Warriors to make this basically a 3-0 lead moving forward in the series?
Well, I think that they're going to win. I think they're going to sweep the Pacers, but it's not going to be based on defense. If you remember last season, they never flipped a switch defensively in the playoffs. It wasn't like they were winning based on being a sound or good defensive team. They really just outshot everyone. Now, they had a few good defensive possessions in the last 4 games of the finals, or last 5 games of the finals. And those stand out quite a bit. The LeBron block being the most iconic defensive play potentially in NBA history. But overall, their defense wasn't really that good. They really won the finals by being able to hit more shots than the Warriors. The Warriors struggled a little bit offensively, specifically Steph Curry. And that's really how they won the championship last year, and they got to the finals by just completely blitzing people with threes. So I just expect them to try to do that for the rest of the playoffs. I don't know if it's going to work. I think Washington Wizards match up really, really well with them, and I think that the Celtics match up a little bit better than people will give the Celtics credit for. So they're going to have to defend at some point. I just don't know if they have the personnel or the scheme to do it.
I think when you look at the Pacers team, you're looking for them to do much more. I think they're also one of those teams that's similar to that in the Eastern Conference, and I hate to put them in the same conversation as the Chicago Bulls because the Bulls clearly have a deeper bench. They have more role players, but they don't have that much more. When you look at the Cavaliers, look, yesterday, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, LeBron James all scored 25 points and taking a 2-0 series lead is serious. Indiana, is there anybody in the bench, Oliver, when you look at the Grizzlies and how they were so close yesterday? I happened to watch that game more so intensively as the minutes started closing in the third quarter and entering the fourth. There was a point separation of 5 to 6 points. I mean, got it down to a 5-point margin. Was it just them taking the foot off the pedal? Were they settling for 3-point shots? What was the reason as to why the Grizzlies lost out more so handily at the hands than you would suspect?
I mean, as Fizdale pointed out, the officiating was pretty poor. But, I mean, I'm not going to blame the officiating for the Grizzlies' loss. I think, honestly, there's a couple things. First of all, Kawhi turned it up defensively and offensively, and that changed the game entirely. You look at the other opportunities for chances and potentially getting a comeback in that game or clawing back into it. I think the Spurs just really clamped down on defense. I just don't think Memphis was ready. Half by half, he really analyzes where things are going and where a game could turn. And he's almost ahead of the curve in a lot of the things that he does. So his rotations, what he does with substitutions and players in certain circumstances, he puts players in a chance to succeed, and if they don't do it, then he realizes it pretty quickly and pulls them out. He's not afraid to do it either. So I just think that, Popovich realized what needed to happen in that game, and they took control. They took control on offense and on defense, and that was the difference in the game. And specifically, if you want to point to a specific player, Kawhi Leonard. I mean, he turned it on. He played excellent. He got to the foul line a bunch, and a credit to him. I mean, look, sometimes he isn't as aggressive as potentially I think he should be because he's such a good free throw shooter. But look, last night he knew exactly what he needed to do. The officials were calling things in the way that they wanted them, and Kawhi recognized that and got himself to the line to put this thing out of reach.
Yeah, he did. He definitely did. And I was watching and thinking to myself, that was an all-ball type of block. It wasn't as if the defender was going after his wrist. I'm trying to remember the player's name to save my life, but he went on the ball to try to block the ball from an easy layup or scoring opportunity, and that was called a foul. I know you had stated that the referees were trying to call it the way that they wanted to call it, but I don't think that they were calling it at least properly. And I don't have a dog in the fight here. I'm not a Spurs fan. I'm not a Grizzlies fan. I'm a fan of the NBA. And when I say I'm a fan of the NBA, I like to talk about it. I like to see things very objectively because I don't have a dog in the fight, and I can do that. I have the opportunity and ability to do just that. But when I look at this game on the overall, there were some very questionable fouls that may or may not have occurred depending on what side of the ball you're on against either Memphis or the Spurs. So, Coach, when I look at the Grizzlies, it almost appeared as though they were headed towards the fourth quarter. They were making shots. They were posting up. They were getting to the inside. They had everything working for them. There was only a 5-point margin of error. And then all of a sudden they start settling for 3-point shots. And they weren't very good from 3-point to begin with, at least later on when they were trying to force that outside shot. Did the Grizzlies just get away from what they had done even during the regular season to carry it into a postseason play where they knew they needed to make the shots inside the post and not rely on the outside?
I don't know if that's what happened. I think the biggest thing is, being down 20. Like, it's hard to come back from that. You only have so much firepower. This is why, like, when you're the road team, you want to try to keep these games close so you can give yourself a shot at the end of the game. But when you have to dig yourself out of like a 25 or 26 point hole like they did last night, it's just really tough to keep that momentum going. You're not going to hit every shot. And for a while there, they were hitting almost everything they threw up. And so, of course, the Spurs also struggled for a bit. And they're not going to struggle for that long because they're a well team that execute well so early and having to crawl out of that hole. It's just really tough.
Yeah, but they were doing it though. They were going down. They were methodically. I mean, all those timeouts that they were taking was, and the message that was being sent is we need to make sure that we post guys up. Marc Gasol even, making a valid effort, but on the exterior, not so much on the interior. I know that they probably relied on Randolph a little too much on the interior. They probably should have swapped the role because I believe Marc's bread and butter is on the inside posting up. When you block guys out from the paint, when you can really box them out. I think Marc Gasol, that's to his strength. I don't even know the game plan. I mean, clearly I'm not a part of the Memphis Grizzlies, but Oliver, when I look at Marc Gasol and I look at his effort, it was almost as if everybody shooting from where they needed to either wasn't making it or they just had the wrong game plan. How do the Grizzlies right the ship here against a very excellent coached Kawhi Leonard Popovich team?
I mean, honestly, I just don't see a way that they can. I'm just being brutally honest, but there's just no way. I just don't see an opportunity where the Memphis Grizzlies can win 4 games in this series. Like, they're just, to me, it doesn't look. They're defensively, they've played well at times this year. They've got a decent little core going in Memphis, but I just think the Spurs right now are up there as the class of the NBA, and I think that what Kawhi Leonard is doing in this series is nullifying anything that Memphis could possibly do. Kawhi Leonard is the difference maker in this series. I think if the Spurs did not have Kawhi Leonard, this would be an entirely different discussion, but I think that is the number one difference maker. He's been excellent on defense. He's a matchup nightmare because of how long he is, and his shooting ability is uncanny. I mean, really, he shoots a very high clip, a very high percentage. He gets the spots where he needs to get to. He's extremely underrated. He's got basketball instinct. He's got a basketball IQ that people really don't give him credit for. And he's not your typical superstar that you see on the floor cooking or see on the floor head bobbing and yelling and screaming. He is just a quiet, humble guy. And I think that's the reason people don't see it as much. But he is like a silent killer, I guess you could call him. And that is the difference maker in this series. I don't see any way that Memphis wins this series. I don't see any way that Memphis even wins more than a game, quite frankly. I don't. This team is deep. They have a lot of different players that they can put into different rotations. And while Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph are great, I don't care what you do with Marc Gasol. If you put him on the inside, you put him on the outside, it doesn't make a difference. I don't think it does, because the Spurs have guys that can match up with that in either LMA or Pau Gasol. Those guys can move quite well with their feet. I just don't see where they can really exploit the Spurs. And I know even if they do, Pop will solve that answer. Looking to the point where they're
coaching. The reason why is because without coach like Popovich, and I know guys like him are dying in the NBA. He's done it with Admiral, he's done it with Dean, he's done it with basically Ginobili and Parker. I mean, there's so many key components, and I believe that the San Antonio Spurs system without Popovich in there would not be as competitive because he brings something to this Spurs team coach, I look at all these components, and I'm not, I'm not drudging up history. I'm not, trying to say that because they were great in the past, they're going to be great in the future, because clearly that's not the case. Otherwise, a team like the LA Lakers, who are clearly out of any contention in any capacity, they're waiting for the lottery to occur. Do you think that this Spurs team would be so where they've been consistently without Popovich as their head coach?
I think certainly Popovich is, super important, right? Like, I mean, he needs to establish the culture that's in San Antonio. But at this point, you've got this cultural identity within the organization. I think could survive Coach Pop stepping down. I mean, if you look along his bench, he's got people that are highly respected. Udoka, Messina. I mean, you've got really good coaches that have been offered jobs at other places but have chosen to stay, with the Spurs. And I think that, when the date does come, which I hope is for a long time, I think that they're going to be fine because they will continue to kind of live his legacy in San Antonio. And I'm sure he'll be involved with the organization, for the rest of his life. And I think that, the Spurs organization is sort of hand in hand with Coach Pop, and I think that sort of stuff matters. But I came into this season expecting them to have a huge downturn, and they really surprised me. But I think that the key to all of that is that Kawhi took 2 leaps, not just one. I mean, Kawhi has just. I mean, he is otherworldly right now. Like, you can make the argument he's the best player in the NBA, and it's at least worth having the conversation. So I think that was a little bit unpredictable. But again, the Spurs are going to spur, and I think that Kawhi is another example of that.
Spurs are going to spur. They're going to spur their way into victory. I like that. I'll have to use that at some point. I agree with you. Popovich has been there for such a long time that he's almost as if there's a successor there, but not quite as visible as others want to see it. I mean, they want to see the heir apparent to Coach Popovich. The problem is that the Spurs organization knows how to keep that stuff under wraps. Whereas when you're talking about culture, and we can shift to the Lakers for half a second, clearly Magic Johnson sent the message that we need to change the culture here. And of course, the firing of Jeanie Buss's brother, Jim Buss, and making some transitional things happen within the Lakers organization. And I've asked numerous about this, and Showtime and the Lake shows there, and all things inclusive. Is he the right man for the job in Los Angeles for the Lakers organization, or is this just a trick pony?
I think it's a good move. I mean, anytime you have an ex-player that's well-respected around the league, I think that it's a good move as long as the guy has some form of basketball IQ and understands the business. Look, I mean, I wouldn't say that Magic Johnson's the star of the show or potentially the guy who's going to lead you to the promised land, but I think it's close. And I think, adding a guy like Pelinka in there and some other pieces, I think it's a good idea. I know they've mentioned Kobe in the conversation as well. Changing a culture is not going to happen overnight, though, and I think that people need to realize that. I mean, look, Magic's going to go out and do what he can to get free agents. Magic's going to go out and do what he can to change the mindset and change the locker room and change the atmosphere, but that just doesn't happen overnight. I mean, the Spurs, this has been growing and growing and growing over a very, very long set of years, and it's not something that just happens on a whim. So while I do think they're good moves, while I do think it's a good hire, while I think change is good in a scenario like the Lakers, I do think it's going to take time, and I like the roster that they have assembled. I like some of the pieces that they have. If they can add a couple of more, maybe they're a playoff team next year, maybe they're not, but I think Magic will... I think he's going to struggle to begin with just to understand kind of the way the business of the NBA works as opposed to what he thinks it works like. But I think a lot of players do take into consideration who is running the team. And if you are an NBA player and you know that an NBA player is running your team, I think you feel like you have a guy on your side. And so for that reason, I do think there is an element where Magic could bring extra talents, whereas someone else maybe couldn't, because players can relate to him a little bit more. And when you talk about some of these younger guys, I mean, they don't really know Magic Johnson, but when you talk about the vast majority of NBA players, they know Magic Johnson as one of the best players in the game. And, you know, you can talk to whoever you want, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, whoever it is, and they will all tell you that Magic Johnson was up there, like, no matter what. So that is a good thing for the Lakers. That will be the difference maker between him and just another GM that you hired. And I do think that has some weight and carries some momentum for the Lakers in the future.
Yeah, I think the name says a lot. I mean, the fact that the Lakers were able to talk him, and not really into, because everybody has their own mind, they can make up their own decisions, but he did it for the right reason. He didn't do it for his own selfish reasons. Otherwise, if that was the case, it would have basically said, you know what, I'm just going to be the head of the LA Dodgers, and I don't want no part of the Lakers. But that's, I mean, the Buss family is who helped Magic Johnson become basically who he is within the organization and with the other players around him, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a little bit of Kobe Bryant here and there. I mean, you had Derek Fisher. There's so many components of it, and that tradition kind of carried on, but since faded, Coach, when you look at Magic Johnson, some of the players in the overall players that are headed into the LA Lakers system via lottery or free agency?
Well, you know, I mean, the beauty of the lottery is that it doesn't matter. Those guys don't really have a choice. So, you know, they're kind of stuck, which is why I'm pro-player movement. You know, like when those guys leave in their free agent contracts, you know, I support it fully. But as far as recruiting free agents, I don't know how many of these guys even really remember Magic Johnson. You know, like, I mean, I think he was done playing before the majority of the young guys, or, I mean, most of the guys in the league even were born. So, or at least his heyday, you know. So I don't know how much weight it holds. I guess the future will tell. This summer will be very demonstrative as far as the gravity of Magic Johnson. You know, is he able to lure in a free agent or two that maybe they wouldn't have gotten in years past? I don't know. I know that Paul George is probably heading to the Lakers, not this summer. I would imagine he, you know, isn't traded by the Pacers and he comes of his own volition next summer, but that's more about where he's from than it would be Magic Johnson. So I don't know. I mean, I think the jury is still out on that.
I think the jury's still out as to whether or not Magic Johnson is a guy for the job. So you bring a very good point up there when you talk about other players that are now entering, albeit free agency or in an NBA lottery. I look at the NBA like this. If I'm a player entering, whether it be the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, to learn about the guys who made the game what it was, to become a student of the game as they did. And I think that it's remiss. I mean, you don't necessarily have to study Michael Jordan's moves or to look at Scottie Pippen and how he was such a viable cog to Michael Jordan winning those championships and all the misses that he made versus the ones that he had actually taken that counted when they actually did count. But I think something to be said for being not really a historian, but Oliver, I look at these players entering the NBA, and of course, these low-hanging fruit high schoolers like a Kobe Bryant that enters the NBA. You don't find those often. Do you notice that players entering the system now, regardless of what team they end up landing on, are ready to go to that next level? Or do you think that there's still some growing to do in regards to them personally and or professionally at the collegiate level to be more of a success in the NBA?
I mean, there's a lot of guys that probably should not go to the NBA straight from freshman year of college. I just don't think there is. But there is also guys, and there's exceptions to that rule, where I do think that they should be able to go. And so, yes, there's a disparity for sure. I think, this year's class, you could probably look at Markelle Fultz and say yeah, I think he could go to the NBA without even going to Washington. Would he be as great of a prospect as he is if he didn't go to Washington? I don't know. Lonzo Ball, same situation. Those guys are elite talents, though. Those are the, 1%. While I just don't know if they're like solve this issue. You know what I mean? So, yes, there are players out there. I think they're very deep. I think that there are players out there like a Josh Jackson who probably didn't need to go to college and could have gone straight to the NBA. Would they play a bunch? Would they grow? Would they exponentially improve? Probably, maybe. Some may not. I think a lot probably wouldn't, actually. If they're not getting playing time on the court and seeing the court night in and night out with NBA talent, there's no way that you can actually improve or get better. That is my philosophy. It's been that way for a while. I just feel like players who are drafted high should be given an opportunity to play as much as they possibly can. You look at a guy like Brandon Ingram. He's not the greatest player right now. He's not the most polished. People knew that coming out of college. But he was, a top 3 pick in the NBA draft, and the Lakers drafted him as if he was going to be a centerpiece to their future. They put him on the bench. They moved him around. They rotated him, and good on them for doing it. But I do feel that there's a point where no matter what their statistics are, no matter how good or bad they're doing, they need to get time. So there is a flaw in the NBA. It's drafting guys very highly and not giving them an opportunity to really grow and improve. So I don't know if there's a solution. I think the easiest solution would be, just let them go to the D-League and foster them there and then bring them up to the NBA when they're ready. That way they get minutes against quality talent, against guys that are getting paid, so they get the experience, they get the ethics, they get the morals involved with it, and then they can move up through the ranks there. But like I said, I just don't think enough of these guys that are being drafted are getting that opportunity to play. And for that reason, I think they are stunting the growth or just not growing at all, pushing their confidence to an all-time low and allowing them to go. You talk about a guy like Anthony Bennett or, a former number 1 pick like that, and yes, there are question marks around Anthony Bennett. Was he a good player? Was he not? And most people would say he probably wasn't. Most people would probably say he was a bust. But I will give him the benefit of the doubt saying that he never really got an opportunity coming out of college through the draft to actually get a starting position and play quality starter minutes for a long enough period of time to really judge whether he was a good NBA player. So there are times that I feel like players are slighted, and it's unfortunate, but that's the situation you're given. Life isn't perfect. You've got to move on. You've got to find a way to succeed. And to me, it just seems like the whole system is flawed in that aspect. I think the easiest way, like I said, would be to allow guys like a Fultz, like a Ball, who don't need to go to college, go straight to the D-League and draft them out of the D-League. I think that gives players an opportunity to play as much as they possibly can. It allows them to be the talents that they are. It doesn't allow them to get focused on school or something else and have secondary problems like a Ben Simmons had last year. So those are the reasons I would say that just eliminating the draft completely and going with a D-League foster kind of program to where you can draft from the D-League to the NBA would probably be the best solution.
You bring up a lot of great points because when you're a student athlete as a starter, whether you're in the NFL, whether you're in the NCAA system as a whole, I think scouting has a lot to do with why somebody's got to be fun. Bring this negative persona with them, and I'm not going to pick out Lonzo Ball, about his dad. I'm not going to pick on individual players, but when you look at the mentality from when you leave as a junior, it's like, well, you hold on a second here. You haven't gone through half of the things that a senior like Kennedy Meeks for North Carolina. The guy played the entire, I think he's into his last year, if I'm not mistaken, in North Carolina. And then eventually he's going to get into the NBA. And when he does, he will be ready because he had the time in. As a starter, everybody starts on the bench. That's just how it is, whether you're, regardless of what NCAA system you're in, football, basketball, women's or men's, you start on the bench and you recognize that, look, I have to learn the system. I have to understand the system. But with that comes character actions before you get to the next level. So you're not taking it with you like baggage, like Lonzo Ball will. And I'm just using the keyword baggage here because he does come with baggage. Everybody knows that this isn't a real big secret. Coach, when I look at guys like Lonzo Ball and I see the talent that he has, didn't make much of a case for me in the Elite Eight when the UCLA got debunked, I guess, for lack of a better term. When you look at someone like Lonzo Ball to carry the discussion onwards in relation to a guy that does Lonzo Ball deserve to be at the next level, or do you follow Oliver's view, which I certainly do, in relation to sticking in the D League first, or if you're talented enough, you bypass college altogether, go to the D League and end up earning your stripes to get into the NBA?
So first with Lonzo Ball, I mean, I think the kid is obviously talented. I think he's ready to play at the next level. I don't think I'm a big fan of that. I've actually been advocating for players to look for opportunities overseas. I think that you could actually just take the year off and, hire yourself a skills trainer like myself and get yourself ready for the NBA. Start learning what it takes to be a professional, not pretending to be a student athlete. These one and done guys, they really just go through motions. And so often what you hear is, well, there are character issues. They don't go to class, blah, blah, blah. Why would they go to class? Like Ben Simmons, there was a lot of talk about how he couldn't carry his crappy team to the NCAA tournament. Okay, well, he's on a crappy team. Basketball is a team sport. I don't think he should be, looked down upon for not being able to carry a bunch of scrubs to the tournament. So I'm a huge fan of guys not going to college. I think that they should, if they're definitely going to be pros. I mean, Michael Porter Jr. is a guy Oliver and I just saw at Hoop Summit last week in Portland. And that's a guy that's ready to go pro now. Now, is he ready to be a starter in the NBA? Probably not. But he for sure should be at the end of the bench and going to the NBA. It's different than what they've been doing in high school and AAU and what they would do that first year of college. I think there's so much development that they're missing out on by going and learning bad practice habits and things like that. College coaches haven't quite caught up to the NBA and what they're doing with biomechanics and all these other things. And I just think that, missing that year of development is huge. I think these guys would be better served to just skip that year of college and get paid.
We're going to switch to, that's actually a really good point. I look at the whole payment, and they're both sides. They're both valid arguments, gentlemen. We could clearly take this for another hour at least, talking about the advantages of college players being paid in the NCAA, college players that don't deserve to be paid in the NCAA. So there's definitely two different arguments, both very valid arguments. The problem is, and I'm kind of leaning towards not paying them. And when we can have that conversation, because when you talk about the payment process, it's almost as if I started broadcasting because I want to get paid millions of dollars. Well, that's not the reality. Okay, that's not the reality. So as someone who's starting this off, I've been in this for 4+ years now, and I started from nothing. Where I'm at right now, it's still not where I want to be. So as an NCAA player, you have to put the grind, which equivalents to time. And when you put the time in, that enables you to get paid. But in the NBA, or let's just say the D League, for all intents and purposes, because you do get paid there. Oliver, when you look at, and I understand the validity of college, you're there to get an education, you're there to get some type of degree or certification or something of the like, and I'm currently a student, so I understand that. But don't you believe that when you're talking about time, do you think that skipping college is the right thing to do, regardless of how talented you are? Because you're not going to be able to play forever. I mean, you can ask any agent, you can ask any former player, say if you don't have a solid plan before you get into the NBA or NFL or NHL, that all that money that you otherwise would have saved is gone and you end up being broke. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, skipping college is not, I'm for it. I'm completely for it. I think that is the way to go. If you're that talented and you want to make a career out of playing basketball, that's what you should do. Everyone has their own opportunity to do what they want, and while education is great, wonderful, for 98% of the population, these guys are freakish athletes, they're freakish human beings, they have talent that nobody else has, and they need to utilize them, and I believe they should as long as they love the game and they want to do it. So I don't think that's really a question for me. I think, honestly, when you look at it overall, online, you can take your classes. You can have tutors while you're in the D League. You can still get a degree. It's not like you can't. So for me, I think personally, there's no reason why skipping college should have any effect on these players turning pro or not.
Don't you learn certain valuable things while you're in college, like team player? You're being a team player. You're taking one for the team. There's something to do if you don't at least take 1 year in college so that you understand the fundamentals of a college system, because a lot of the college systems, a lot of college coaches that leave the NCAA head into the NBA in relation to, well, this is where I want to coach next. I mean, could they take at least 1 year? And I understand that they're freakish guys. Again, guys like Kobe Bryant don't grow from trees every single year. You're not going to find those types of guys in the NBA year after year. It just doesn't happen. Coach, I'm going to ask you the same question. Is there validity in staying in college? I mean, can't you just stay 1 year? Would that be too much to understand the fundamental of an organized sport in a collegiate atmosphere, so you can take that, at least that 1 year of playing to the D League and be successful at it?
I just don't think that college basketball translates to the NBA at all. They're almost different sports. I mean, they've got different rules. The refereeing is completely different. But yeah, I would rather get these guys in the NBA environment as soon as possible.
Well, you heard it there, ladies and gentlemen. That's kind of how the cookie crumbles. Let's talk about the other two games that we were, and I'd be remiss if I didn't have a conversation about them. Why is this Raptors team for real? I mean, do you see DeRozan? Do you see the starting cast for Toronto being able to come back against a very gritty Milwaukee Bucks team? They're down 1-0.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Bucks are a threat. The Bucks. Yeah, I'll take a stab. Yeah, the Bucks are a threat. They are a threat. They are a team that's going to be very dangerous in the playoffs. I've kind of been picking them as kind of the upset, like kind of the nice pick for an upset potentially, just because of their length, their athleticism, their size. I think Thon Maker is vastly underrated. He's improved tremendously over the season. You look at some of the other guys they have one of the more underrated shooting guards in the league, and Chris Middleton, who can hit the outside shot, is a pretty decent defender. They've got, obviously, Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is, he's done as well as he can possibly do this year. He's had triple doubles, and that obviously doesn't really matter too much in my mind, but to the NBA fan, that's a big deal. So I think, for the most part, the Milwaukee Bucks have a very good combination of size, versatility, and speed that almost matches pound for pound what Toronto is able to do. Now, Toronto has more talent, I think, overall, but I do think that they're undersized in specific positions, specifically when you talk about a guy like Kyle Lowry. He's not only undersized, but I think he's a little bit slower and not as fast as he used to be, to where, Brogdon and some other guards that the Milwaukee Bucks have been able to kind of slow him down and stop him and get him off of his rhythm, which is exactly what you need to do if you want to beat this Raptors team. So I still think Toronto may have a better shot than Milwaukee to win this series, but I do think Milwaukee certainly has probably the edge at this moment. different moments, and I think that Jason has done a good job with the guys that he has, and he's put them in positions to succeed. Like I said, a guy like Thon Maker, he's been tremendous. He's been very good interiorly, defensively. He sticks with a lot of their players, and his versatility adds a ton to this Milwaukee Bucks team. And then you talk about another guy like Greg Monroe. He's been not only talked about in so many trade rumors, I can't keep up with them, but he's also been a point to keep in mind of how this team is winning games. I mean, he's had a very good contributing role to their success, and I think people forget that. But yeah, this Bucks team is a little deeper than people give it credit for. I think they have a very good chance of upsetting Toronto.
Coach, and to your point, Oliver, I think they have way too much length on the inside. I think their defense is that much better. And when you look at Milwaukee, when you look at what they've done in the regular season, it would be a horrible thing to suggest that they would not get past where they're at right now. I mean, Milwaukee has the grit, they have the players. 97-83 was a final, and of course they lead game one. Coach, I look at, and not a whole lot of talk around here in the West Coast when you talk about the Washington Wizards. Of course, that's in D.C. and Atlanta against the Hawks. And I look at a regular season comparison between the two, somewhat similar, but there are a lot of things that are different in relation to points overall. Rebounds are on the side of Atlanta, and I look at this matchup, and I think to myself, is this even possible? I mean, is this even something that Atlanta can do? And I know that the Wizards have Wall, and I know that they have a supporting cast there, but are they as deep as people think that they are? And can the Wizards really wrap this up against Atlanta in this series?
Well, the Wizards actually are not deep at all. Their problem all season and in this first game of this series is their bench. Their starters are fantastic, but their starters also played about 500 more minutes than any other starting unit in the league. They were amazing in game one, and they were the reason that they won. The bench kind of, cracked the bed, so to speak. And so I think that the key for the Hawks is to try to increase their tempo to get the starting unit off the court. The Hawks are a little bit deeper than the Wizards, and that's where their advantage lies. And so, yeah, but I still think the Wizards are just such a better team that this is, at best, a 5-game series for the Hawks.
Oliver, I'm going to shift that over to you. Do the Washington Wizards just have John Wall? Are there more secure starting players on this team that can make a deep Wizard run against Atlanta? Or do you think that they're also a team that could be ousted early against Atlanta?
I think the Washington Wizards are way better than Atlanta right now. Atlanta is kind of up in the air, in my opinion. I just don't think they have enough talent to beat this Washington Wizards team. Their starting five is very good. I think his three-point percentage in game. All of it because of John Wall. I think he's kind of the engine behind it, obviously, but these guys are very, very talented, and I do think that they have, I don't think they have a shot. I think they are going to win this series. I don't even think it's really a question. Atlanta's good, don't get me wrong. They've got guys like Paul Millsap and some other people, but I just don't think they have enough. I don't. And Dwight Howard has been kind of a shell of himself. I think Gort Hott outplayed him the last game they played. So I think there are very big signs that Atlanta is just not good enough, not on paper or talent-wise, but just not good enough as a team. They just don't play very well. It's not very fluid offensively. I don't like the body language that they give off. I think that the Atlanta Hawks just are the inferior team at this point.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rudy Reyes of the Brew Dog Show, WBLZSports.com. Gentlemen, I have, and we can have a debate on this all day long if you want to, but I don't have another hour, so I lost there. But I see Golden State taking this Portland series. That's not even a question. They're too deep, too many bench scorers. The Clippers get swept against Utah. At least that's my humble opinion. Why? because they just don't have enough. I mean, they have DeAndre Jordan, that's fantastic and everything, but the way that they're playing, the way they allow teams to come creep up behind them, as we've seen against Utah, and that's one of the reasons why Utah ended up beating the Clippers out, owning the series 1-0. And then
wait,
I knew that was
you think Utah is going to sweep Los Angeles?
The way that they're playing, yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Yep.
All right, without Rudy Gobert too.
Yep, without Rudy Gobert, their best player. Yep, I do. Because the Clippers...
Okay, well, yeah.
I just call it like it is, man. You know, if it works, then it works. And if they get past, so be it. But I don't know. There's just something missing from this Clippers team that does not make me believe that they can really make a deep run and get past Utah. But if they do, then so be it. I'll eat my shorts. But the way that they're playing right now does not give me that indication at all. It just doesn't. I mean, Gobert's not going to be back.
I completely disagree. If I can interject, I completely disagree. I think the Jazz were lucky to win that game without Gobert. I mean, you know, ISO Joe hitting that game winner was fantastic, and you know, some things worked in their favor. But I actually think the Clippers, because I expect Gobert to be done for the series at the minimum, possibly for the entire playoffs if the Jazz move on. But I think the Clippers are going to probably win this in 6. I think we're going to see a much more aggressive Chris Paul. I think that they're going to do a better job of maximizing DeAndre Jordan's talent. It's not going to be good for the Jazz.
Well, I can put it this way: when I looked at the body language of DeAndre Jordan and his lack of contests, when you're talking about shots he could have otherwise blocked that he didn't jump up to even make an attempt at blocking the ball, doesn't tell me that he's in it to win it. Just his physicality. And you need him inside. You just do. So I think whatever anomaly they want to blame it on. So if they go deep, then so be it. I just don't see it. Guys, I'm out of time. Unfortunately, I wish I had another hour. We can go on about this for another hour. Anyway, Coach Dave DuFour, tell everybody where they can find you and how they can reach and listen to all your good NBA talk.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Coach Dave DuFour, DU and the number 4. And actually, later today, I'll be recording a podcast with our very own Oliver Maroney. So make sure you check that out, and you can subscribe. All the links or the relevant links are pinned on my Twitter.
Well, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Shoot Coach Dave a follow. Great conversation. Thank you, Coach, for joining us. Oliver, same thing for you, sir. Where can everybody find you? And, of course, we already heard somehow we're on the same wavelength today. There's a podcast you're going to be doing with Coach Dave. Tell everybody where they can find that later on this afternoon.
Yeah, at O'Maroney NBA. That's OMARONEY NBA. And you can follow my work there. I write for Dime Magazine, so that's where you can find most of my stuff. It's up on uprocks.com. So, yep.
Wow, Time Magazine. I'm impressed. Thanks, Oliver. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for coming on to the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Thanks for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is... All right, take care. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Well, there you go. I'm out of time. This is Rudy Reyes on the Rude Dog Show, WBLZSports.com.